Listen, I did film and television studies at university for 3 years. I spent hours reading countless books and articles on subjects spanning from film all the way to television. Not a single one mentioned Hugh Grant once.
I achieved the hardest qualification across any university or college ever, a 2-1 in history. Let me tell you, the only thing that I learned was that we, as a society, have a history of denying and neglecting Hugh Grant's artistic and cultural relevance, not just in this country, but in the entire world.
I met Oscar at a Hugh Grant-themed event I put on at the Students' Union.
It felt as though Diggory and I were the only ones there, and we agreed that there was a Hugh Grant-shaped hole in academia.
We decided to put it right ourselves. We want to show people that he's an icon in acting.
We want to show people he's more than just a bumbling posh guy.
I'm Diggory Waite.
And I'm Oscar Beardmore Gray. And this is...
Taking Hugh For Granted.
Hi there, you're listening to Taking Hugh For Granted with Diggory Waite and Oscar Beardmore Gray, the podcast in which two friends watch every single film starring Hugh Grant and ask the simple question: is this film taking Hugh for granted? Is this film good on its own, or does it rely on the bumbling Brit for its acclaim?
This week we're reviewing 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Seen by many as Grant's breakthrough film in the mid-1990s, this classic was a massive hit and was the first time many had seen Grant's perfect curtain hairstyle and awkward mannerisms. The film's premise centers around lovable Englishman Charles, Hugh Grant, and his group of friends who seem to be unlucky in love. When Charles meets a beautiful American named Carrie at a wedding, he thinks his luck may have changed. But after one magical night, Carrie returns to the States, ending what might have been. As Charles and Carrie's paths continue to cross over a handful of weddings and one funeral, he comes to believe they are meant to be together, even if their timings always seem to be off.
4 Weddings and a Funeral is a British classic. When you think of British rom-coms, I think this is one of the first that you'll think of. And also, I think for us, this film was very much Hugh's breakout film. This is what took Hugh from, Maurice was a big film for him, but this was the film that took him to that next level. He was paid £20,000 for this film. The next film that he did, he was paid in the millions, and that was in Hollywood.
I mean, well, we're incredibly fortunate actually to even have Hugh Grant as a successful actor in the current form that he is, because when he got the script for 4 Weddings and a Funeral, he was actually thinking about giving up acting. He'd become frustrated with the industry, obviously hadn't had a huge amount of commercial success over the years before it. And he was thinking, you know what, I'm not sure I can continue doing this. Felt quite disillusioned. Similar parts were given to him, and he wasn't having too much success. So we got to consider ourselves lucky that this one really caught on. Otherwise, we wouldn't actually have Hugh Grant, firstly, in this film or as a national icon at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Although, having said that, I think he would think, and many others think, that this film gave birth to the Hugh Grant stereotype and the typecast that we all know and adore. But I think from our research, our scholarly research into his earlier films, I think it's very much apparent that that is not the case, and it's very much present before this film. But this one, just going into it a bit more, is Richard Curtis, who wrote the film, wrote it with the sort of bumbling. The script was very disjointed, especially for Hugh Grant's character's lines, Charles's lines. They were a bit disjointed, but the director, Mike Newell, wanted him to mess it up even more. He was like, mate, kick it into overdrive, get it all over the place. And Hugh clearly was more than happy to do that.
If you take a step back, the success of this film is quite amazing. I mean, it was made in 6 weeks. It had a budget of £3 million, which is tiny in today's market.
Yeah.
It was one of the highest grossing films ever. And it won 5 BAFTAs and 2 Oscars. And in its BAFTA category, it beat both Pulp Fiction,
No way.
and Forrest Gump to the BAFTAs.
That is insane. I did not know that. When you look at that, that's a joke. That's crazy.
This is just fab. I want to say, I'd like to apologise to John Travolta, and not just because he's a big Hollywood film star and a bit of crawling, won't do me any harm, but he should realise that the BAFTAs are a little bit flag-waving, and, had Pulp Fiction been set in the heart of the Sussex countryside, which I think would have worked. It would have been different, but it would have worked. Then, obviously, things would be very different now.
Had you seen the film before?
I had seen the film, yes, once before.
Yeah. I had, although I fell asleep before the funeral and the last wedding. So I only saw 3/5 of the film.
I think I watched the film when I was about 16, and I don't know, it was just one of those films that I wasn't too keen on at the beginning, sort of going into it, because it was a film that was more my parents' generation, and I know they liked it, and therefore when I was 16, I went into it thinking this is going to be shit.
Yeah. Classic.
And I think I thought it was okay. And yeah, I think it's one of those films that sort of, sadly, a bit of a rite of passage for every British person to watch. I feel like everyone's sort of either heard of it or knows clips about it. At least knows there's a Hugh Grant film.
Yeah.
And it's probably one of those films that you sort of understand the jokes a little bit more as you get older.
No, it's true. I remember watching Friends when I got older and being like, "What is going on here?" Like, it's crazy. I mean, we can definitely cut this, but I remember that this is weird. I remember shortly after losing my virginity, I was watching TV, and everything when they spoke about sex, genuinely, it felt like I had a seismic change in my life, and I was like, I know what you're talking about. I actually know what it's like now. It may stun some listeners to hear that I have had sex before.
Look over there. Hugh Grant's in a prep. Look over there. He's holding a baguette.
Let's dive straight into it then. Hugh Grant's character, because he's the first person we see. What do you think of his look? What do you think of his character throughout the film? Thoughts and feelings?
Well, I think we should start with his look. We watched a lot of films together of Hugh Grant, Diggory, but for people, this might have been their first Hugh Grant film. Hugh Grant, he's very set in stone. This is the classic look for him. He's got his curtains hair. He's in a morning wedding suit, which is just like his pajamas, effectively. Like that's what you kind of expect of him. And yeah, he just looks good. He looks good, and he looks kind of a bit scruffy on the side as well, and which is interesting because I think I read that Richard Curtis, the director, with his hairstyle, told him actually to make it as messy and unkept as possible. And it's just quite amusing that basically after this film, when the Americans saw it, they went to every barber and said, could I have a Hugh Grant style hairstyle? And I think Hugh commented later in an interview and said that was just ridiculous because he'd been told to make it look as messy as he possibly could.
Well, what I would say on his hair is, like you said, he hated that hair. But I think this is the quintessential Hugh Grant hair. It's the curtains that are. It's like the perfect break in the middle of his head, perfectly poofed out, like you say, delightfully messy. And sitting atop a character who is posh and bumbling and hopeless and hapless, and it's brilliant. So I love that. Also, his look is amazing because the clothes are meant to be terrible. His outfit, I think he actually looks kind of cool, but his outfit I think is meant to look a bit scruffy when he goes to these weddings. It is always the same thing he wears, and it is a bit like, his shirt's a bit crinkly, it's etc.
It's all last minute.
Exactly. And then there's that amazing scene where he is gone to the place where he's trying to buy a present for another wedding that he's going to, and Carrie comes in, and he's wearing the most dreadful outfit. He looks like he's straight out of a Bristol, that Love Saves the Day Bristol festival.
Yeah, and he's wearing shorts, which is strange.
Yeah, he's wearing shorts and a shirt that's like really loose fitting shirt that's rolled up sleeves. It's not Hawaiian. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it's like a horrible sort of mustardy green colour. It looks like you could see about 1,000 guys at a festival wearing it.
It's like 100 teenagers at V Fest or something.
Yeah, big time.
It's the look of a really posh person who's gone to uni and decides to order a load of wavy shirts off Depop and suddenly becomes really cool.
And wear a shirt with shorts And that like whole what's going on there. But that's what. But don't get me wrong. I think it looks fucking cool. But it's then when you see the sock and shoe combo he's gone for with it as well. So bear in mind he's wearing a shirt and shorts, and then he's got brown socks on that are really fucking long and proper like nice black brogue shoes. And you're like, mate, no, no. And it's funny because so many people say they love that look. And I just remember when you see it in the film and he's stood there and he's basically telling Carrie he loves her. It's just like, mate, you can't.
No, you can't do that.
What are you doing in those shoes?
No.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
I really feel, in short, to recap in a slightly clearer version, in the words of David Cassidy, in fact, while he was still with the Partridge Family, I think I love you.
I think the glasses really complete the look.
Oh my god, you know I'm a sucker for glasses. If someone pulls off glasses well, I'm like, yeah, right on, brother. Here we are. We're there together. He looks so good in the glasses because he always takes them off before he's about to go and talk to Carrie. And I'm like, mate, keep them on. You look fit as fuck.
He also looks great when he takes his glasses off and then puts them back on.
Yeah, because it adds to his appearance. Yeah, it's hot. It's so good. Yeah. But then in terms of his character, well, yeah, what do you think about his character first, in general, if you have anything to say about it?
I mean, I think he is genuinely the guy who is unlucky in love, and I think he does a good job, and the directors do a good job to convince us of that. It's interesting that Richard Curtis actually didn't want to cast Hugh Grant originally because he thought that he was too good looking for the part. I think that was because Richard Curtis actually he kind of wrote this film with himself in mind. He saw a bit of himself in the character. He'd been to lots of weddings over the years, never seemed to have a girlfriend when everyone else did, etc. And I think you can say that Hugh plays this character very effectively. You know, it wouldn't be a cult classic if it wasn't. And you are on his side, which I think is important to any love story. You're on his side, and you want him to get a girl. You want him to fall in love.
Yeah.
And you know, he's sweet, but you also want to punch him in the face. So that's just classic Hugh Grant. I always want to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that I think all guys can probably relate to this film a little bit, and that's probably one of the reasons why it is popular, because we've all been in that situation where we fancy a girl, you know, we maybe been chasing after a girl for a long time, and then, you know, your paths do cross eventually, and you have that one fleeting chance, to make it count.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to your big moment, and you've bigged it up in your head for so long, you basically completely screw it up. And this is exactly what happens with Hugh in Four Weddings and a Funeral, and that's why it's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I agree that you're on his. I agree that he plays the part really well. I think he made the role his own. Like, that's why, even though, like you say, Richard Curtis didn't want to take him on, after that they worked together minimum 5 times. They worked, you know, on all these other films and all these other projects that you mentioned before. So he played the role to perfection, almost. And you do side, and I think he's a sweet guy. There's that weird moment where he sits on which is a great scene where he sits on the table with all of his exes, there, and like loads of his exes are there, and then they do, and some of them do say, or at least one of them says, you know, what's her name, Hen or whatever, what's she called? Or the one that he ends
Hen.
up, that he's meant to marry.
Henrietta.
And she says, oh, you know, you were so sweet. You were just so sweet to me. And I that's nice because, and I've been skirting around this for a while, but I have to say, I don't know if I really liked the film. And I actually had this strange... I was really expecting to go in and really like it, but it had this weird thing where I sat there and thought, this is quite a cynical and sad film. And I don't know if I was coming in expecting to feel British, jolly, happy, silly. And I've come out a little bit feeling sad, like true love doesn't exist. Like, you know, like it's British, but a shit kind of Britain. So hopefully this will be a fun coming together, because I think there's definitely, I don't know if my reading is too common, but Hugh's character, it's sort of, I think he is nice, but then that scene when he's on the table with his exes and they all say that he was either rude to them or rude about the other ones to them, sort of does starkly contrast when that lady's Henrietta's like, "Oh, you were so sweet to me." Here's my take as well. Hugh Grant. Let's talk about the main love interest. Hugh Grant and her have sex. Fine. That's fine. Nothing to say about that. They meet again. We find out she's engaged. They fuck again. I mean, I don't feel great about that.
I think you're right that there are quite a few things that are skirted over. But I think this is exactly where the film gets its huge popularity from, because it's kind of based in a horrible realism.
Yeah.
And that realism is that, people do marry people for their wealth and their riches. People do cheat on their partners and their husbands and wives. And people do treat people badly, and this film has all of those things, and it's a sad reality, and you don't like to see it, but it's true. And another one is the situation with Fee, who is one of Hugh's best friends in the film, but spends the whole film in love with him, and she hasn't got the balls to tell him, basically, and that's something that's also based in realism. I'm sure we all know a friend or have known a friend who is in love with one of their best friends. I mean, I would say it's even happened to myself.
And they can't stop loving him.
And that's a very relatable thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of being cynical, but you're also not. I think it's a very, very good reading of the film. But, I didn't want to read it like that.
No, exactly. And that's the thing, I don't want to read it like that, but I couldn't help but draw myself away from this. And to be honest, it's similar to my reading of Love Actually. I've said for a while that I've only seen it once, and I remember thinking, I can't remember it that well, but I remember thinking at the time, this film is horrible. Almost every character in that film I thought had an aspect to them, or an aspect to their quote-unquote love, that was fucking shit.
Yeah.
But then I realised, and I thought, hang on a minute, what's the film called? Love Actually. It's Love Actually. Love for real. This is what it's like.
Exactly.
And I was like, damn, that's clever, but it's not what I want to watch at Christmas. I want to watch something where everything's happy-go-lucky. And
I think that's what makes this kind of film so successful, is because you have both of these things. You have this kind of ridiculous story in fiction that is completely unbelievable, but then is also, when you strip it down, based on stuff that is very believable and is encountered in everyday life. You have this posh scene that, with all these ridiculous characters who could never possibly exist, and lots of people wouldn't be able to relate to, but then they can relate to what's happening in their lives. And I think that also is quite British, these particular things in British culture and film. I think there's a lot of skirting around subjects without hitting them straight on. It's very American to be a bit more direct. So I think that's probably why a lot of people can relate to this, even if they're not, say, a posh person who goes to a wedding in a morning coat. So I made a little rap about our boy Huey G. His hair's pretty fresh, you have to agree. So if you're repping how he acted in Love Actually, then tune into the D-Dog and OBG. We've been live on air since UOB, where we both went to study for our uni degrees. We first made our name on Burst Radio, where we hosted our weekly football show. And I know, like you, I'm a bit posh for the mic. I never played Glasgow or get Stormzy's height. So we're taking you back to the day Huey started and asking whether Hugh's been taken for granted. Maybe, Diggs, we should move on to some of the more entertaining parts of the film.
Absolutely.
I had two scenes in particular that I wanted to go over. The first of which being the first time he sees Carrie.
Yes.
And then the first time he meets Carrie. The first time he sees Carrie is brilliant, and it goes something like this.
Any idea who the girl in the black hat is?
Name's Carrie.
Pretty.
American.
Interesting.
Slut.
Really?
Used to work at Vogue, lives in America now. Only goes out with very glamorous people. Quite out of your league.
These few lines are literally just made for Hugh, and it really sets us up for the rest of the film.
And also it's perfect because it's sort of already like Fiona clearly knows what's up as well, and that's why she's also like slut, trying to not only put her down but sort of put him off the scent. Which I think it works so well. That is really funny. But what about the first time they actually speak to each other.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
You want one of these?
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Charles. Hello, dear John. How are you? Good, good. This is,
Carrie.
Carrie. Delighted, I'm John.
Hi, John.
So, John, how's that gorgeous girlfriend of yours?
She's no longer my girlfriend.
Ah, dear. Still, I wouldn't get too gloomy about it. Rumour has it she never stopped bonking old Toby Delisle just in case you didn't work out.
She is now my wife.
Excellent. Excellent. Congratulations.
Excuse me.
Oh, and then Carrie goes, and he's like, "Oh, well, that's good. Any children on the way? The sound of any?"
Do you hear the patter of tiny feet?
Oh God, that bit's so funny. But again, like, yeah, that bit's hilarious. But again, when I look at that at the end of the film, I was just like, God, this guy's a knob. Like, you know, I wasn't happy about that. But that is so funny. And that, yeah, there's just moments like that throughout the film. Like you say, these one-liners that just like, yeah, Richard Curtis does so well, and they punctuate the film perfectly. They are hilarious.
Somebody after some transition music. Right. Yeah. That'll do. Good.
When you think of Richard Curtis films, you can't get too far without seeing Hugh Grant. And when you think of Hugh Grant, you literally, you know, Richard Curtis is there next to him being like, oh yeah, I'm here as well. Like, we come as a pair. So you're absolutely right. Rowan Atkinson.
Well, I mean, you can't talk about Four Weddings and a Funeral and not talk about Rowan Atkinson.
Yeah.
And if you thought that Hugh Grant and Richard Curtis are a bit of a duo in the film world, I mean, Rowan Atkinson and Richard Curtis are the original pair.
Absolutely.
I think they met at Oxford, if I'm correct. They've written so much stuff together. Mr. Bean, Blackadder, yeah.
And then obviously Rowan Atkinson's in this, which they weren't thinking. I believe actually the story with that is Richard Curtis. I think it may have even been at Cambridge, and Richard Curtis was on the Footlights, and he'd spent ages writing this like really 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 tight stand-up script, and he went up there and he delivered it, and he got some laughs, and he came up and he was like, wow, that was I think I did really well. But then he was trying to talk to someone at the bar, and he was like, what is that noise? And people were absolutely dying over there, laughing at the next guy up. And he was like, who the hell is that? And he looks, and it's this guy on stage with just a piece of paper just going, didn't say a single word, and everyone in the room is absolutely dying. That was Rowan Atkinson, and Richard Curtis was like, I hate that man. I hate him with everything. Because he was like, I spent this whole time writing this amazing stand-up thing, and I've been poring over it, and I've finally done it, and it was great. And this guy comes in with a piece of paper, makes some silly faces and noises, and brings the house down for 10 minutes. I think he said that on Graham Norton's show, and I was just like, what a great story. But obviously, similarly to with Hugh Grant, like Richard Curtis did not like Hugh Grant, but now obviously, you know, it turned out they were good friends in the end.
I think we should talk about Rowan Atkinson as a trainee priest.
We haven't even said what he did yet.
Here are prayers for Bernard and Lydia. Through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Ghost.
I mean, what did you think of the scene?
It's just good, honest fun. Rowan Atkinson plays he's a trainee priest.
I mean, just the role, the character of being a trainee priest is brilliant. I mean, Who the hell is a trainee priest?
That I know not of any lawful impediment.
That I know not of any lawful impediment.
Why, I, Lydia.
Why, I, Bernard.
Exactly. And he's newly ordained, and so he's giving this second wedding, or maybe third wedding anyway, and he, much like Hugh Grant, stumbles over almost every line, says the wrong thing, and when it's Rowan Atkinson, it's the classic plosive, or the bubble, and everything he says is undercut and undercut with that. And he's such a low register.
John Delaney.
Yes. When he waits, and it's his vacant expression with his eyes when he's trying to think of words.
It's so funny. You can just see like his jaw just like drops, and it looks like he's going to vomit or something.
Oh God, it's so good.
Jane Delaney. I mean, what did he say again? Joined in matrimony.
Yeah, John in matrimony.
And I, Bernard Delaney, do take thee, Lydia Jane Hibbert. Do take thee, Lydia Jane Hibbert, to be my awful wedded wife. To be my lawful wedded wife. That's right. That's right. May Almighty God bless you all, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
It's so good. It's such a good scene. Yeah. So Rowan Atkinson does a fantastic job, and that's a really nice moment in the film, just because it's a crazy cameo. And at the time, when I saw some of the interviews, they were like, "Yeah, we didn't think we'd get Rowan because it's such a small part. We didn't think he'd play it, but he did, and yeah, he was great. So I think it's a real coup for the film.
I mean, he's kind of now the king of cameos. I mean, I don't know if this was his first cameo, but he's got obviously a very similar cameo in Love Actually.
From then on, but then obviously we've got some of his standalone films. He still does the Mr. Bean ones and Johnny English, where he's still.
Mate, I love Mr. Bean's
They're
Holiday.
just brilliant. They're just so good.
Stop me, oh, stop me. Stop me if you think that you've heard this one before.
Stop. We've heard it before.
So, Diggs, I've picked up on a new Hugh Grantism that I think we can add to our list of Grantisms, and it ticks all the right boxes. And that is the use of the third person. So I feel like whenever Hugh is trying to convey something or say something indirectly, he uses phrases like, suppose if one did like a certain person.
Yeah,
like
that's it.
Using that word one to deflect what he's trying to say and make it indirect.
Yes.
Which I think is used throughout Hugh Grant's filmography. Like it comes up a lot.
I always worry I'll go too far, in the heat of the moment.
Uh-huh. How far do you think too far would be, then?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe that would be all right.
It works a charm. You're absolutely right. That is such a Hugh Grantism, and I can't believe we haven't picked up on it before. We have to start making this list before it's too late. We've got to start writing these down. You're absolutely right, and I can't wait now that we've worked it out to start looking for it in every film from now on, because they are there. They're out there everywhere. I remember I can't remember exactly what I said, but I asked a girl out in that way in year 8 at a school disco. I remember that Sex on Fire was on, and
back in the day.
Yeah, what a great tune. And we just listened to that.
Fire.
And she was like, I know you love this song. And then we went outside, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And I think I was using some sort of pet name for myself, and I was like, oh, what if this wall wanted to ask you out or something? Not me as being the wall, but I was looking at a wall. It was just the lamest thing, it's kind of, that's why it kind of works, and it's kind of right, and it's, with Hugh Grant, it's he does it all the time. It's great.
Look out the window. Look out the window. Look out the window. It's Hugh Grant in a Pret.
Also, another thing about this film is it starts a bit of a revolution where sort of a university elite set of actors and actresses really take over the British film. I mean, just looking at this film and the cast of Love Actually, for example, the likes of Hugh Grant, the Footlights crew, basically, Rowan Atkinson, Hugh Grant, Hugh Laurie, Stephen Fry, Richard Curtis.
Yeah, jeez. It extends beyond that. I believe Olivia Colman. I'm pretty sure that
Mark Corrigan.
Mark Corrigan.
Mark Corrigan. What's his name?
Again, his typecast. Wait, shit. What's his name? David Mitchell and Robert Webb. Yeah.
Robert Webb.
Yeah, I think so. Like it is, but okay. So this is actually maybe quite a nice segue to my other issue with the film, was in the fact that the background of the characters, because there wasn't any, it kind of pissed me off. The only background to the character we got was like that guy Tom being the 7th richest man in England, and then the fact that it doesn't seem like Hugh at all has any sort of job or anything just made me feel like they were a bunch of posh people who had loads of posh friends, and they went around to these parties and had a real good jolly posh time, which kind of pissed me off. And I'm glad that in some of my research on the film, that apparently was quite a wide criticism of the film. And it's funny because they actually did film a scene where Charles, or should I say Hugh Grant, and Carrie are in the car, and Carrie's like, well, I met some of your friends.
I met a lot of your friends at dinner.
Yes, they're a strange-looking bunch, I know, but on the whole, nice personalities, I think.
Did you meet each other at college?
Mainly. Matthew, Fiona and I were there together. Gareth was a professor, but he was asked to leave after he published a controversial essay called King Lear, Grandpa Goes Gaga. And Scarlett, I found under my kitchen table after a party about 4 years ago, and she's never left.
But that
was the deleted scene.
That was a deleted scene, yeah. But it's interesting because because of the lack of background, I kind of was pissed off as well, because I was like, oh, I wonder whether these guys are just a bunch of knobs, like a bunch of posh knobs, and that's very much how it felt. But it's interesting to have that background of whether that would change my perception of them had I known that, even though it doesn't help too much. But do you know what I mean? I did kind of feel like...
I mean, I think it's interesting because... We both know, and we all know, that Britain still is quite a classist place, and there is a fair bit of posh bashing. But then again, virtually all the exports and famous actors in these kind of films and in that era of British cinema are basically poshos.
Yeah,
and I don't really know why that is, and why that happened. I mean. It's probably the American market, because the Americans have a very fixed view of what an English person is, and they sort of typecast that basically what Hugh Grant is. And the worldwide success that you can gain through these sort of exports. That's probably what's driven it.
No, I absolutely agree. I think it does work, because, like I say, when I the idea of what I thought this film was going to be going into it, it could have easily played on that had I not had such a cynical view of it. So I also would subscribe to it and sign up for it. But it's weird, maybe with my cynical hat on, which clearly I did have on yesterday when I watched the film, I came away, arms folded, thinking, bunch of posh knobs.
Well, Diggs, mate, I'm afraid to say that you picked the wrong job with the wrong podcast here. We're reviewing every single Hugh Grant film. We're going to watch every single posh film that's come out in the last 25 years. I mean, what were you thinking?
Yeah,
mate?
I know. I should really just sign off now.
I mean, we should have chosen Tom Hardy or someone like that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, mate, I'd love to watch Bronson.
I came for a shootout with some proper men. How does it go again?
Oh, I haven't seen it in so long. I came for a shootout, right, with some proper men. Oh God, I love that so much. I got to watch that again. That was such a shit film, in my humble opinion.
Hold me, I'll give you all that you need. Wrap your love around me. You're so excited, I can feel you getting hotter. Oh baby, I'll take you down. I'll take you down where no one's ever gone before. And if you want more, more.
What I would say as well is I was watching an interview with Rowan Atkinson where he talks about the film, and he said it's interesting when you watch the film now. The jokes are still very good. The film does feel of its time, though. It feels 25 years old now, the way men and women interact. As long as you treat it as a period piece, I think it's still got some fun stuff in it. What do you think of that?
I think that's actually a very good take.
I agree with you, Rowan Atkinson.
I'm just trying to think of a moment in the film when I got that impression.
Oh, that maybe when I think that's the thing, because I thought that was part of the reason why I maybe had the take on the film that I did. But to be honest, I think a lot of it is. I think it's consensual, which I know is weird that I have to say, that a film is consensual. But you know what I mean? Like, it feels like there's nothing too... Oh, actually, there is one bit where there's that guy following Carrie around and he's like, I think I'm in there. Yeah, that's a bit... And I guess the whole film he's trying to chase her around, but that's consensual because as soon as she invites him up to her bedroom and stuff. So that's the thing. I don't think there's anything too bad, but the premise of the film is sort of chasing and trying to find love and people settling for other people, and they're like, oh, this will do and stuff. So maybe the way that men and women interact definitely, like you said, has changed, but I still can't fully put my finger on too many places other than obviously the one where the guy's like, oh, where's that young American girl? Other than that, which is clearly, fucked.
I mean, that bit is that bit's bad.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh God, Oscar, I've just forgot something as well.
What?
I have to get this out there. I really didn't like the way that Carrie was acted. I personally don't think that was a very good. Let me look up quickly. I don't know if Andie MacDowell, who played Carrie, I personally don't think that was a very. I do think it's down to the performance. I think it's quite wooden, and I didn't fall in love with her as I thought I should.
Yeah. She's not particularly charismatic.
No.
But I think what they were trying to go for was a kind of serenity, much in the similar way to Julia Roberts in Notting Hill, and having the American woman who's always sort of happy and evergreen, and that serenity that surrounds that. Comparing her and Julia Roberts is maybe a bit unfair, but I don't know. It's just. Yeah, her character just comes across as a little boring, I think.
Yeah.
They're trying to go for that serenity, but it doesn't quite come off.
Exactly. But I'm not excited to get into bed with her. I'm excited to get into bed with him, even though, as I've said before, I'm not even that excited to get into bed with him. So do you know what I mean? Like it feels, but also like you say, I think the character is wooden, and what she doesn't say. And we're talking almost about Julia Roberts as well, because she doesn't say too much. I think they both keep their cards quite close to their chest a lot of the time. They just reply, a lot of smiling, a lot of yeses, like that, which I think that can be sexy and cool and fun and, and character building in a way, because they say almost more with what they don't say. But in this, it just sounds like she is just being like, yeah. And that's it, and it's just like, and so
it just kind of seems like she's going along with everything, and she doesn't really have an opinion on anything. She's not a particularly strong character, and the fact that she ends up with that guy who looks like could be her dad and marries him kind of says it all, really. And I think you're right. She's not a particularly strong character or very charismatic.
No, there's not much going on, and for me it's no more so apparent than you have that moment. Your wife's in room 12. My wife. Oh, my wife. And then he goes upstairs, and then she's like, "Hey," at the door and stuff, and that's fine. And then she gets in, and then suddenly she's like, "I think we should kiss." And you're like, "Where the hell did that come from?" I feel like there's been no build-up, and suddenly it's just like you're just at this level of now you're the freaky one, and it's like, I don't know. And then the rest.
Hugh Grant has this really strange effect on people in a lot of the films that we watch. That there's absolutely no build-up to suddenly this person falling absolutely head over heels for him. I mean, it's really. I mean, I think we all wish we had that talent. Hugh walks into the room and then everyone's like swooning over him. It's ridiculous.
I mean, I actually think I was more in love with Gayatri from The Bengali Night, which, if you haven't listened to that podcast, spoiler, it's fucking shit film. And let me tell you now, it's hard.
What a podcast!
Yeah, of course, it's hard to get on board with when the film's shit, it's hard to get on board with its characters. However, I was more in love with Gayatri than I was with, and it's not good to compare with Carrie, because even though her characterization in Gayatri's was crap, it was much better. Well, for me anyway, it was. I say much better. It was slightly better. Than Carrie's. I just feel like, she's such a wooden performance as well, because I think that I actually think that a lot of it comes down, even though I'm saying the characters well, I think a lot of it does come down to how the character's played, and it was played in such a reserved way. I was like, give me something to love about you, because obviously I can love the way you look, but we want more than that. It's 2019, people. Listen to what Rowan Atkinson said. We deal with people different ways now.
Taking Hugh for granted. Taking Hugh for granted. Taking Hugh for granted. What did you think, lads? Were they taking Hugh for granted?
Diggs, what do you think? Do you think this film was taking Hugh for granted?
I think... Is this film taking Hugh for granted? No. I think Richard Curtis was almost, as we've spoken about, but I don't think this film was taking Hugh for granted. I think this film, it makes a big impression, and even with my reading of the film, I still think it's a good film. I think it's funny, and I think, like you said, it's love, like we both said, it's Love Actually. It has that realism about love, which is really cynical and really sad if that is the case. And the best thing about it is there is this guy at the centre who plays the role to perfection. It was a role that even though they didn't know at the time, it was written for Hugh Grant. So I would say, is this film taking Hugh for granted? No.
So for me, it's a definite no. We are not taking Hugh for granted in this film. For this reason, if we hadn't had this film, then there is no way that Hugh Grant's career would be anything like it is today. So we have this moment in history to thank for catapulting one of Britain's most famed and loved actors to make this sparkling career that we've all grown to love. And secondly, I think we also have to pinpoint this film, Four Weddings and a Funeral, as the moment of a new genre of film, which is the sort of British romantic comedy. Without this film, we wouldn't have had any of these other films like Love Actually. And whether you love him or hate him, this genre and Hugh Grant as an actor is one of Britain's most successful foreign exports. I mean, like everyone around the world loves Four Weddings and a Funeral. They love Love Actually and other films like this, and this really encapsulates everything that Hugh Grant is about and how effective and how brilliant the writing and the acting is. And yeah, I have to say we are definitely not taking Hugh for granted with this one. You might not love the film. I don't think we especially love the film. It's not our favourite Hugh Grant film out there, but it's brilliant. It's still great. It's witty. It's funny. It's brilliant.
Yeah. What a lot of people love about this film and what I like about this film is Hugh's performance. That is a huge part of it. So are we taking him for granted there? Absolutely not. He's a huge part of this film, and yeah, he's not being taken for granted.
Well, there you have it. The verdict is that Hugh is not being taken for granted in this, our very first episode, Four Weddings and a Funeral. Join us next time on Taking Hugh for Granted. We've got some cracking episodes coming your way that you won't want to miss, including Hugh being seduced by a serpent woman in rural Derbyshire, and also our man putting on a questionable accent in India. We'll be back for more next time.
Back for more next time. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Taking Hugh for Granted is produced, edited and presented by Diggory and Oscar Beardmore Gray. The producers of Taking Hugh for Granted would like to state that this podcast is in no way associated with the actor Hugh John Mungo Grant, nor does it endorse his views or represent him in any way. Instead, by creating this podcast, Oscar and Diggory hope to celebrate Hugh's illustrious career, reliving his old classics and shedding light on some of his hidden gems. Hugh, if you're listening, we hope you approve.